Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Box Report, episode 384. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me, usual cast of characters. After being off for 2 weeks, just scheduling conflicts, on my individual news and NY fight. She's back, ladies and gentlemen. Also joining us, Daniel from Four Boxing News and Jen.
Hearing
Yo, little distortion on the audio. Hopefully that'll all clear up as our Wi-Fi smooths out. Glad to be back. You're hearing the keyboard warriors clicking away. There's a lot to do, a lot to talk about.
Is that better now?
Much better.
Okay, thanks. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report live YouTube show, podcast, discuss all things boxing, modern wisdom. When boxing is good, we'll talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it pertains to the sweet science, it will get discussed. If you want to find out any and all information regarding Pound for Pound Box Report, the site is the place to go to. POPBoxingReport.com. If you wish to email us with questions, suggestions, thoughts, etc., you can do at POPBoxingReport.com. On the site, you will find links to check everything Pound for Pound Box Report all over social media, links to the YouTube channel, links to Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, IG page. Also on the site, links where you can check out the show in podcast form. All RSS-fed distributed platforms, be it Apple Podcasts, be it Anchor, be it Spotify, be it Google Podcasts. We're just about everywhere now, with the exception of Amazon. Also, links to where you can donate. You can find there. You got a Cash Me and PayPal donation link. Let donation be the best nation. If you got some spare change on hand, getting holidays. We're in the month of November now. Be it $1, $2, $5. There, any contribution will be greatly appreciated. If you're checking us out on YouTube, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. It'll help the overall algorithms. It'll get us closer to being monetized. Last but certainly not least, on the site, please check out the links to Beachbody On Demand. If you're looking to get yourself into some shape, if you're looking to keep off the pounds as you get ready to chow down on your Thanksgiving and Christmas turkey to close out the year, and all the foods, please check out Beachbody On Demand. Programs for any kind of workout and fitness goals that you're interested in. If you're looking to really challenge yourself, may I suggest 6 weeks of the work. If you're looking to just get brolic and lift weights, may I suggest Lift 4. Other programs like Bar Blend, Morning Meltdown, PIO, the old school P90X and Insanity Asylum series, they still knock. If you're looking for a boxing specific, out 10 rounds, a 6-week program, 5 workouts a week, 3 days boxing based cardio, 2 days of weights, excellence, and check out the programs that I suggested. Again, if you're looking for a boxing specific program, I suggest 10 rounds. And at the very, very least, please check out the 14-day free trial. And that is, if you decide to take advantage of that, you'll get 14 days of free access to any and all programs on Beachbody On Demand. Let's get things going. The reason that took place this weekend. Let's start. How do I want to start? Let's start with the big event of the weekend that took place in Dubai, right? The main event being the return of Dmitry Bivol, defending his WBA 175 belt against member challenger Gilberto Ramirez. And we talked about it before we were on air live, right? And a serious argument can be made that Bivol is the top dog at 175 pounds. He's coming off of the win against Canelo in May. As I said on numerous times, the question for me was not whether could he beat Canelo. The question was, would he get the benefit of the judges' scorecards, and he did. Turns around and defeated a Zerto Ramirez, who a lot of people felt who was a dangerous live dog, right? But Bivol dominated him from jump, Gail. Once he was able to put Zerto, who looked as big as a house, he looked at least 200 pounds in there, right? Once he was able to put Zerto on the back foot, to me, the fight was over. Bivol, in every aspect of the game, you want boxing, he did that. You want inside fighting, you did that. You want combinations, he did that. You want defense, he did that. Even took a couple of punches from Zerto in there. Just all around dominant performance by one Dmitry Bivol.
You know, for those who in the past have called Dmitry Bivol boring, I got a bone to pick with you, especially after this weekend. That was the most masterful display of skill we've seen in a long, long time as a well-rounded package, a little of everything. And was it an all-out brawl, Mexican-style war? Yeah, I love a good brawl as much as anybody. I've seen plenty of them, cheered them on, and they're great. They're great, no doubt about it. But there was so much and such varied skill on display, plenty of punching power, plenty of action. And I would argue, in many cases, the tension between fighters as to when they're going to strike and what's going to happen can add to the drama just as much as two guys wailing on each other. That's the highest level of the sport. And it's really rare because it's hard to do. It is really hard to put all those skill sets together. There are a lot of fighters who are really good at one thing, two things, a couple of things. They're very good at what they do. They win, but not like this. This is next level stuff. And you need to appreciate what you're watching when you see it. What Bivol does that draws the criticism is he knows just how much work he needs to do to get the job done. And he never works harder than he needs to. So he is better when he faces a higher level opponent. He does sort of, you could say that he sort of slides by when he fights the Craig Richards of the world, the Castillos of the world. But there's nothing wrong with that because it saves him for when he really needs it. It saves his energy. It prevents him from getting damaged. He did have his head snap back by Zerto a couple of times. He barely flinched. He took it, processed it, and kept right on coming. He's so defensively responsible. And it's not that he's avoiding shots in the way, say, a Floyd Mayweather does. He does it with footwork. And he does it with such a pinpoint awareness of distance. That's what's so interesting to watch. He can step a half step back, and that punch has whizzed by his face every damn time. And I found myself during the fight looking at Zerto and Zerto's face. As you could tell, he's trying in his head to think, how the hell do I get to this guy? I just need to get to him so I can punch him. And he was getting increasingly frustrated, and he'd get smacked in the face and he'd get pissed off. You could just see him thinking, God damn it. The frustration was getting more and more obvious as the fight went on. I had it scored 118, 110. I didn't think the judges would score it quite that definitively. We're hard on judges when they get things wrong. I'm going to applaud them this time for getting it right. The scores were very fair. They showed the dominance. Anybody who gave Zerto more than a couple of rounds, I don't know what they're watching. What's going to be interesting now is the path forward. We all know that Bivol wants to unify. How he's going to get there is going to be a very interesting discussion. And what other roadblocks or gates he has to pass through to get there. But we should all be standing in appreciation right now for Dmitry Bivol. I mean, if you are truly a person who studies the sport, there's no denying it.
It's the simplicity for me and Daniel. Um, he is not as draw dropping in his style as other 68, 75 pounders in the past. To me, he's very Andre Ward like, not as mean on the inside, quicker feet and more active on the outside. He does he does every little thing in terms of subtlety and nuance. Top tier, right? Fundamentals, top tier. Put that with his athleticism and his boxing brain. He has a boxing computer in his head. In many ways, at his best, he can befuddle a guy and break a guy down mentally, much in the same way as Lomachenko without the exaggerated movement, right? That's the thing that was impressive to me. He wasn't all super flash, like say a Roy Jones in his prime, but he's still as effective and as dominant. And we saw it again here. Bivol, Daniel, smack dab in his prime. And yeah, I could not be more impressed than with what I saw. Gail only gave him 2 rounds, only gave him 1 round. He was that superior in there.
Well, I did give him a mercy round. I will say that.
I would probably say at most you could give him 3 rounds. Like the 117, 111 card seemed to be the most
Grading
fair.
on a curve, Daniel. Grading on a curve.
But to me, the difference came in the 5th round because I had to fight even in 4 rounds because even though the zone commentary was probably as blind as a church mouse when it came to the early worker Zerto when it came to the body, Bivol at that point actually seemingly not even trying figured out the distance he needed to do in order for him to land his jab effectively, land the counter right effectively, and do it in a way where did not give Zerto an opening to land more body shots. And that changed the complete tenor of the fight. At that point, it just became a little bit of target practice for Bivol. And if Zerto happened to catch him, he caught him a couple of times, but it wasn't bad enough where you could tell that Bivol was in any relative danger. Now, what was both smart and probably foolhardy, looking back at it, is Zerto's plan to just do a steady pace. Don't really try to overexert yourself. That way you don't get tired in the middle rounds. The problem, unfortunately, with that is that Bivol just decided to be at least 1 or 2 steps faster than you. And unfortunately, at that point, Zerto wasn't able to keep up. Even when he tried in the later rounds, in the championship rounds, to land a couple of shots, by that point, it was already too late. And at the end of the day, it just showed how far above, mentally, skill-wise, Bivol was in this situation. He got hit a couple of times. He was able to negate the one main attack that Zerto could have had on him, which is the attack to the body. And he really answered a lot of questions.
There's levels to this, and Bivol showed that he's a couple levels above Bivol, who again, he's no slouch. Former champion at 68, and heading in, there were more than a few fans and pundits who felt that he had a serious chance to win here. Let's go back to Gail's point about the future of Bivol, right? There are 2 main options. One is a contractually obligated rematch to face a Canelo. The other one is him going for undisputed a status against unified champion Dmitry Bivol. I'll go to you, to both of you. I've been saying for months now that I don't want to see a rematch between Bivol and Canelo. Bivol beat Canelo before, and based on how both men are fighting, Bivol is fighting with a renewed sense of confidence, right? Uh, right? And while Canelo, yeah, he got the win against the Triple G, but let's face it, this is the same Triple G who is 40 plus years old. On the other side of his prime, clearly, I'll insist until I will not put it. How can I put this? Until Canelo shows me proof, I think that Bivol beats him again, just as easy, if not easier. The fight for me, I'll keep saying this until it happens, is a fight with Beterbiev, who's coming off of 2-round destruction against Joe Smith. That is a top 3 fight that I want to see in 2023. I know that Beterbiev has a mandatory defense coming up, I think February, in and around that time against Anthony Yard. But assuming, you shouldn't really assume, but let's just say he gets by that. For me, Beterbiev Bivol, that is the fight I want to see at 175 pounds. I know Canelo is the moneymaker, is the cash cow, but no. I don't want it. I wasn't excited about Canelo's third fight against Gennady Golovkin. I'll be just as unenthused about him fighting Bivol again, because from Bivol, he's in top form. I just don't see Canelo having any answers for him should they do it one more time.
I'm with you. I don't need to see it again. I don't think the world needs it again. I don't think anything will change. However, Bivol himself alluded to this. You know, he might be contractually obligated. It's going to be interesting to see what Canelo decides to do, what Eddie Hearn, tries to maneuver them to do. Obviously, there's a lot of money in it, even if the members of this panel aren't super enthusiastic. There's still a lot of money in it. If Hearn wants to take both of them back over to the Middle East this time, a lot of cash to float around. I get that. The problem is any danger, however remote, that Bivol's wish to pursue being undisputed at light heavyweight gets derailed by this. So that's a legitimate fear, not necessarily even because he loses, but because he gets injured, some other crazy thing happens. Who the hell knows? What's interesting, though, is what he talked about at the end of the fight. We got into this before we hit the airwaves tonight about Bivol going down to 168 for this rematch. There's an interesting advantage for him, not in the tactics of the fight, but if he does the rematch at 168 and puts the light heavyweight belt aside for safekeeping and it's not in play, losing, as unlikely as I think that would be, even at 168, doesn't threaten his quest to become undisputed in any way. That belt's still off in the safe or wherever the heck it is. I frankly think he would still beat Canelo at 168. Bivol's a very lean 175, and he makes that weight with no problem. I've had the opportunity to work with him back when he was co-promoted by Main Events. And I've watched that man eat the week of a fight. And he has no problem making weight. I've seen him have a full meal the day of a weigh-in, the day before weigh-in. I mean, I've seen him at a buffet, okay? I do think he'd have to work a little bit at it. That is 7 pounds that he's going to have to strip off. But with a good nutritionist and enough preparation, I don't even see it being that big a deal. He's very lean for the division. So, if you think about it that way, what a triumph would that be that he beats Canelo in 2 weight classes and all of Canelo's belts are on the line at 168. Now, I think for that reason, that's why Canelo won't do it. But it is a very interesting discussion. We'll see what the accountants, the promoters, the deal makers have to do with it. And I think they're going to have as much say in the decision as the fighters are. Probably the guy with the least amount of say is going to be Bivol.
What say you, Daniel?
On one end, I can clearly see the position of you and Gail that there's really no point in making a rematch with Canelo just because of the way he beat Canelo. It wasn't a question. It wasn't up to discussion. He just was flat out better. But what you have, and this is counted to both sides, what you have is unfortunately a little bit of hodgepodge situation where you can't do unified right away because obviously Beterbiev has to defend against Yard. And like Gail mentioned, there are a lot of variables. One of those variables, which is very unlikely, but it's still possible, is Anthony Yard winning. And because as hard as Beterbiev hits, his body's breaking down pretty badly too. So there is that small chance that Anthony Yard winds up winning this fight. And that, fortunately, on the business side, puts Eddie Hearn face-to-face with Frank Warren. If there's anybody that Eddie Hearn does not want to do business with, almost to the point where he will need to, is Frank Warren, a domestic rival. Because then think, if my memory serves me correctly, didn't Anthony Yard kind of edge out Buatsi for this spot against Beterbiev? By a little bit of a hair?
I mean, I guess technically, but Anthony Yard is, I think, either 2 or 1, will be now for the BA. So in theory, not Yard, but Buatsi is, I think, 2 by the BA. In theory, you can move up to number 1. So regardless, his position is there and relatively safe.
But the point is that Eddie probably wanted Buatsi facing Beterbiev rather than having Anthony Yard do it, because for the case that I mentioned, there's a chance that he could win. That throws a little bit of a wrench in that situation. When it comes to the Canelo situation, it's fairly simple. You have Canelo being prideful, wanting to probably avenge a loss, even though the loss was pretty bad. And they're contractually obligated. Also, not to mention that the only major opponent that Canelo could have at 168 now is going to fight Caleb Plant in 2023. So basically, all you need to know when it comes to that is it frees up his calendar to do it, because otherwise, what's Canelo gonna do if he doesn't fight Bivol? He's gonna fight John Ryder? Yeah, it'll still be pay-per-view because it's Canelo, but it wouldn't probably be as intriguing.
That's gonna be the tune-up fight. If he does a tune-up fight, that's exactly the name that was rolling through my mind, Daniel. John Ryder. Don't you think?
Yeah, that's kind of sad. It should be Danny Jacobs, but I'm going to leave that one alone.
God. That's a coin toss to hell.
Yeah.
Really? Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to leave that one. I'm going to leave that one alone. But in all reality, yeah, as much as we probably don't want to see it, it's probably going to be one that's we're going to wind up seeing, because everybody else that they could line up against either is already a prior engagement, or if they lose that chess piece, put themselves in the worst position promotionally. So, as sad as it is, we're probably going to wind up seeing that rematch, whether we like it or not.
I think that spoke for all of us right there. I mean,
I
really.
still say Bivol, outboxes the mess out of him. I don't even want to think about that again. I mean, why? Let's move on. I'm going back to you, Danny, to talk about a fight that took place on the undercard. Jessica McCaskill, who is undisputed champion at 147 pounds, made the decision to drop down to 140, fight Chantelle Cameron. Cameron held two belts at 140 pounds. This fight was for undisputed status at 140 at junior welterweight. And tale of two halves here. First half, Cameron did some really, really good boxing, while on the other hand, McCaskill looked off. I mean, I'm not saying she's the most aesthetically pleasing in terms of style, right? But she's effective at what she does. That wasn't the case the first 5-6 rounds here, as she fought as if she was stuck in the mud, listless almost. She picked it up in the second half of the fight, but it was too little too late. Cameron ended up winning by unanimous decision. She's undisputed champion at 140. Afterwards, she gave an interesting proposition. That is, she's willing to fight McCaskill again, but this time in McCaskill's division of 147 pounds. I wrote about this for Three Kings Boxing. Go to Three Kings Boxing, your source for pure unadulterated boxing information. Shout out to the entire 3KB crew, the HNIC, the head of all Three Kings Boxing, everything Three Kings Boxing, 2K, aka Prodigy of Boxing Talk, rest of the folks on staff, senior writer / head of media relations, Bo, who you heard on this podcast numerous times, fellow senior writers, Bakari Jarrell, aka Big Cool, Red, who does all the editing behind the scenes, a lot of work on the site, as well as yours truly, who's a senior writer. I don't do work behind the scenes, but I'm a senior writer there as well. My question is, Daniel, should McCaskill take up her offer of a rematch at 147? The reason I asked should she, because she looks so listless in this fight. She looks so out of sorts in the first half of this fight. And the thing about Cameron is she has all the tools to thwart the aggression and the strength of McCaskill, right? She's a very good boxer. She has power to keep McCaskill off. And McCaskill at 38 years old, this going down and then back up in weight, that could have an effect on her physically. Whereas Cameron, younger, fresher, I think a move up to 147 wouldn't hurt her one bit. She beat her this time. I'm thinking she would beat her again in a rematch.
Yeah, this was not the most pleasing fight if you were a fan of Jessica McCaskill. The first half of the fight, it kind of looked like she was half asleep, which you couldn't do against somebody that was as determined as Chantelle Cameron was. And she took full advantage of it. Now, granted, McCaskill turned it on in the last 3 rounds. She kind of figured the urgency of the matter, but by that point, it was a bit too late to do so. And the intriguing part about doing the 147, that may actually just be a question of, was this a situation where McCaskill was weight drained and wasn't able to do much? If that's the case, then yeah, she could probably fare better. She could probably take the effort of the last 3 rounds and put it together for an entire fight against Cameron. But therein lies the variable that this fight has not given Shavkatdzhon. The fact that she knows now that she can beat Jessica McCaskill in a fight. Once you give a fighter that confidence against an opponent, it's very, very hard to take that belief away. It would have to take a really, really hard knockdown from McCaskill to Cameron to shake that confidence off. Will McCaskill do it? Her pride might actually force her to do it. But at the end of the day, it's a situation where it might be lose-lose for her.
Am I wrong, Gail, in seeing parallels between McCaskill, Cameron, and Bivol in a possible rematch with Canelo?
It's a good question. It is a real puzzle to me what happened to McCaskill. She absolutely was off. And I wonder if in the coming days we're going to hear something about being ill, some other kind of physical problem or challenge that, she decided to just suck it up and move forward. There was something. I mean, don't you agree with me? Something was wrong. That's not the woman we've seen buzzsaw her way through opponents.
I mean, shout out to Dicaire over at Three Kings. He covered this fight for Three Kings. He covered the entire card. And while he was watching and chopping it up with us in the chat, he said that she looked drunk.
Right. Definitely not all there mentally. And I say that only that to really mean, the nerve endings in your brain that have to fire to get you in a position to make all the micro decisions that have got to be made in the ring. We were just talking about someone who does it to perfection, Bivol. He sees everything in the ring so clearly. He's so calm. You win the fight in the mind first. And her mind was not there. So, yeah. So for that reason, I would like to know what happened. And that would help me decide, do I want to see a rematch? Do I not? If she insists that she was okay and she did her best and that's just what happened, I don't need to see that again. I don't. I would rather see, matchups with some of the other top women. And here's what's so nice about this discussion. Finally, we're to the point at the highest level of women's professional boxing that they have options. There are more options. There are more women there. They don't have to take the only opponent anywhere near their weight division to get a fight. But I think we'll learn more in the next maybe days or even might be weeks about just what the hell happened there. Having said that, props to Cameron. She got the job done. She looked good. She delivered. And no matter what shape McCaskill was in, Cameron won the fight.
Indeed, and we'll see what McCaskill decides to do. We'll see what Cameron decides to do. The biggest win of her career. She has cachet now as undisputed champion, and she's in the Katie Taylor sweepstakes in many ways. Should Taylor not fight Serrano, I could see a scenario where her puts Katie Taylor and Cameron in the ring against each other. Cameron has wanted to fight Taylor really throughout her entire career. Will it finally happen? We will see. We will see what happens when it comes to both ladies. Let's move on from the UK to Minnesota, and I'll start with you, Daniel. Let's start with the undercard bout. Rakhimov fighting Zelfa Barrett for the vacant IBF belt. The belt was stripped from Joe Cordina when he was injured due to injury, and Barrett got off to a good start, put Rakhimov down, but that little monster Daniel called fatigue started to really set in on Barrett. Rakhimov really came on starting at the midway point and just slowly but surely started creeping into the fight, landing solid punches here, solid punches there to the body and head. And as the rounds persisted, you could see Barrett just start to wilt until just the accumulation of punches, the fact that he was tired, Rakhimov coming on, it just proved too much for Barrett, and Rakhimov stopped him in 9 rounds.
Yeah, this was a very sloppy fight in a way. Rakhimov, they complained a little bit when it came to low, in the nature of low blows, when it came to Barrett, because they were trying to fight on the inside, but he kept going at his own pace. And unfortunately, when you have somebody that can work at their own pace like that, even while facing a knockdown, eventually, yeah, you're gonna break. You're gonna break, and if you're not able to keep up, which is unfortunately what Barrett wasn't able to do. It was a very interesting fight. Like I said, it was a very sloppy fight, but it is interesting to note how that work pace is going to be against somebody like Cordina, who won the title under pretty interesting circumstances, and unfortunately did get stripped because of injury. It would be interesting to see how they could fare if they can make that matchup up, because we have to know it is the IBF, and the IBF is the only sanctioning body that actually enforces their mandatory. So if there is any mandatory, Cordina may have to wait, but he was there to fight. So hopefully they'll be able to this right.
It was set in stone here that the winner of this fight Cordina next. That's basically why he was there, because he know he's gonna get next shot. So those two, they will fight next first quarter next year. It will be interesting to see Cordina. He won the title in one of the knockouts of the year, surprise stoppage, third round KO to win the belt. It'll be interesting how he copes with the rough style of Rakhimov and the aggression of Rakhimov, especially if he decides to get physical with Cordina. But yeah, Daniel, that fight is going to happen next on Matchroom, more than likely. I'm guessing in the UK, fourth quarter next year. That fight is all set in stone. On the let's move from there to Minnesota, and I'm going to bring both of you into this discussion because opposite ends of the spectrum here from an emotional standpoint. And we're going to talk about David Morrell and his win over Yerbossynuly, right? Morrell, the more I see him, the more I like him as a fighter. There were a couple times where I thought he was, playing with his food against Yerbossynuly. Could have taken him out. Ultimately did in the 12th round, but a sad ending as moments after the fight, Gail and Daniel, news broke that Yerbossynuly had to be admitted to the hospital. We now, as of this recording on November 7th, we now know that he is in a medically induced coma. Here at the Pound for Pound Boxing Report want to send our thoughts and prayers to him, his family, his friends, and his loved ones. So on the one hand, overall impressive win by the champ Morrell, but it's an asterisk, kind of a stain there because of the unfortunate injuries suffered by Yerbossynuly.
It was rough to watch. It was rough to watch those last few rounds. I think a lot of us out there, from a benefit of distance and not being right there involved in the fight, started wondering, where's the corner? Why isn't this being stopped? This is a beatdown of epic proportions. At the very end of the fight, when he got hit that second time, he fell into the ropes. Tony Weeks, who is a veteran referee out of Las Vegas, assigned to the fight. Initially, I was very, very pleased to see him there because we're talking about a state athletic commission, Minnesota, that doesn't really have a lot of experience outside the Armory. That's about the only big venue there, and that's a fairly recent development. But unfortunately, because the rest of the state's infrastructure is simply just not experienced, I'm not going to, on this podcast, say they're incompetent, they're bad. They're very inexperienced at seeing these things before they get to this point. I would have liked to see Weeks stop it earlier, but the turning point did come very quickly there at the end. And the way he fell in, Weeks and Morrell himself, David Morrell, and Weeks were the two that got him back to his corner. But I am going to lay the blame squarely on his corner. And we've seen this plenty of times with corners who are reluctant to tell their guy they're going to pull him early enough to avoid what we see happen. Why is that? Well, because the corner counts on the fighter for their income. They are not neutral. So to rely on the corner to be honest with their fighter, you hope they would be. And we've seen so many times where that doesn't happen. So the state's governing commission and infrastructure have to be the ones there to protect the fighter. And when they don't have enough experience, the ringside physicians haven't worked a lot of fights, and the rest of the folks there don't step in. I get it. You do not want to be the bad guy if you're the commission rep to stop a fight, a main event, and have everybody blackball you, scream at you, for stopping the fight. Referees take heat for stopping fights early. People, if you have ever said that, if you have ever groused about a referee stopping a fight too early, knock that shit off. At the very least, keep it to yourself. Because referees hear that stuff. And that is, in part, what leads to outcomes like we've seen. Let's hope that the good medical professionals, of which thankfully in Minnesota, home of the Mayo Clinic, in addition to a lot of other great medical facilities there, let's hope they're doing their absolute best and this fighter recovers.
This was a rough watch after the fifth round. Because by that point, Alimkhanuly's face was starting to swell up, and Morrell's shorts were starting to go from white to just be dark paint with blood. And this is a situation, unfortunately, as I'm watching the fight, the other fight that came to me at the top of my head, there's a couple of other people in the situations. Because we've seen it ourselves in New York, the Mike Perez-Magomedov fight. It reminded me of that fight, and that wasn't as brutal as far aesthetically as this, but we all know Magomedov is not the same. He's pretty much a vegetable now, and it caused the New York State Athletic Commission to enact some really, really strong reforms, including when it comes to insurance, because they got caught behind the eight ball on that. And the other one that came into my head was Peter Colon. Young kid, young prospect, had the whole future ahead of him. One fight, and now this kid is trying to recover from using his limbs. This is what we're dealing with when we don't, as corners don't do what they need to do and stop fights before it gets too late. And some people, I know, I've seen it online a little bit. Some people wanted to blame Tony Weeks for just, instead of using his hand motion over his head, using it across his body. Maybe the corner said, like, no, don't come in yet, but I'm stopping the fight. But that's just laying excuses on the fact that the corner should have stopped that fight 4 or 5 rounds ago. It should never have gone to that point. By the 8th round, it was academic that Morrell was far better. McCaskill. There was no point in dragging that out further, because now you have a man with a medically induced coma. And going back to Magomed and Mike Perez, Magomed, yes, a vegetable. Mike Perez was not the same. Was not the same fighter, and he was one of the dark horses at that time to be a heavyweight contender. I really do hope the same fate does not fall Morrell, who is very talented. You could tell the skills are there. You could tell the attitude is there. You can tell that he likes being in the ring. He enjoys putting fights out for his adopted hometown now of Minneapolis. I hope he doesn't lose that, because fights like this can not only take it out of the person that's suffering in the hospital, but can take it out of the person whose hand was raised as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. I harken back to the early 90s, 1991 specifically, the events that took place when it came to the rematch between Chris Eubank and Michael Watson. I touched on it during the Ladies Love Boxing episode last month, in which kind of the fight went differently, but still Eubank stopped Watson in the 11th round, basically with one shot. Watson was in a medically induced coma for, I want to say, 40 days, and Eubank, and he's partially paralyzed still. He doesn't walk in the same way that he used to, right? Eubank Senior was never the same as a fighter. There are many instances where he had opportunity, where he took the gas off the pedal, right? And as a result, most of his fights went decision. As a result, he never had that instinct to finish again. There are other fighters who had similar scenarios. So Daniel is absolutely right that situations like this, obvious impact on the ones who lose because of the injuries they suffer. But even those who win, from a mental perspective, they're not right either. They still have that in their head. I mean, Nigel Benn, older fans remember his fight with Gerald McClellan. And whenever he talks about that fight now, even now, he breaks down in tears as a result. That is still very much in front of his head, in front of his spirit, right? He's still traumatized by the events of that fight, February 1995. So a win is a win, and Morrell got the win, but just the fight itself, there were no real winners here, given what has happened to Yerbossynuly. Again, we at the Pound for Pound Box Report, thoughts and prayers to Yerbossynuly. We hope he recovers fully. And again, to his family, to his friends, we just hope for the best. I'll just say that. We just hope and have our fingers crossed, hope for the best. Let's come from that kind of sad notes, try to lift spirits up for fans as much as we can. I've talked in the past, and I believe last week, about Caleb Plant, and it's been my contention that when it comes to that, he did not want a fight with David Benavidez as well. I'm here live on November the 7th to say that, man, was I wrong, Gail and Daniel, as towards the end of last week, Plant made an announcement that he has agreed to terms for a bout with one Mr. Benavidez. Benavidez responded by saying, yes, there is a deal on the table and it is done, and I'll sign it as well. Reactions from both of you here. Yeah, Plant, David Benavidez, they've been talking about each other for years. It looks like they're going to finally fight at some point in 2023.
Well, I think we're all recovering from the shock of a fight actually being made. I mean, you sort of have to ask yourself a million questions about, is this legit? Are we hearing it from the right guys? I mean, how refreshing. It's about damn time. Now, this should be the norm, right? We shouldn't be so astonished or so elated by this that we're celebrating. I mean, good for them. It's great. We really shouldn't be considering them heroes of boxing for having made this match. But I'm very glad they did it. Good for them. You know, I do think Benavidez in particular.
Oh,
whoa. Looks like Gail just all of a sudden disappeared for us. I think there's some technical issues on her end. Hope to have her back. Continue on. Carry on with the conversation, Daniel.
well, yeah, when I first saw this, I thought people were trolling. But then everything was made, the proper announcements were made, and on one end, for Caleb Plant, he kind of knows that this is probably the only way to get back to the Canelo sweepstakes. For as badly as he got beat by Canelo, is the only way to get back, really, fully. And when it came to Benavidez, you also didn't have a choice in the matter because you got scheduled to redo a fight with Jose Uzcategui, and the backlash that came from all circles was bad enough that, okay, you had to cancel this. There's no other move to make.
Translation: they shamed him to they shamed him to such a degree that they were like, no, we can't do this.
Exactly. Like, you can't. And like I said, he had no other choice. Who in the PBC would you actually put in that sense if this is going to be the fight that makes his case to say, I got next against Canelo? Not Perturb, not Bivol, not John Ryder, not Morrell, him. So either way, they didn't have a choice. Now, am I elated as a fan? Yeah. Hell yeah. Because these two have been talking so much shit about each other. And we kind of know the way Caleb Plant tends to ride in certain situations. He kind of showed him the Darrell fight. For a band who's from Nashville, he has a little bit of Memphis in him. And then we know Benavidez, he has that work rate that's ungodly sometimes in his weight class. So that's going to be a very fun fight, very interesting fight. I think the date tentatively, I think, is March. But which I said completely takes both of them obviously out of the Canelo sweepstakes until September. So let's get it rolling, and let's see who actually steps up against who. But I also do know, because I said March, there is about 5 months where this could fall apart too. Let's just cross our fingers for that this does not fall apart.
Gail is back now, so I'll give her the opportunity to finish what she was going to say.
I'm not sure where y'all lost me, and I think I must have flamed out because I got so heated in my excitement over this fight. Props to both gentlemen and everybody on both teams who worked to make this happen. Please, everyone, I get it that it's going to be a pay-per-view, but if it is at all a reasonable cost, which to me is $50 or less, not $80, let's support this and show these guys that we do appreciate it when good fights are made. Well, we'll see what the price tag is. If it's higher than that, we'll try to get a couple of friends together, pool your resources, and this is the way we're going to see more fights like this.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I'm pleasantly surprised. I think it will be a decent bout. I will make Benavidez, for the record, I'll make Benavidez the early favorite here. I think he will have too much for Plant, but Plant is going to give him problems throughout. In the end, I'm just glad the fight is happening. I'm not mad at this at all. And I applaud both men for coming together and making this happen. To say more about them, doing what they have to do to make the fight that we can about Spence and Crawford. I'm just saying, maybe they should learn from these two fighters in terms of how to finalize a deal and cut through all the BS. I'll just put that out there, in my opinion. Let's move on from that bit of news to previewing some fights here as we get ready to shut things down. Um, Top rank card on ESPN, I believe. Main event is the return of what the person who I like to refer to as the boogeyman of the middleweight division, Janibek Alimkhanuly. He was WBO interim champ. He has been since moved up to full-time champion as Demetrius Andrade decided to vacate the title and move up to 168 pounds. The reason I refer to him as the Janibek, Mr. Kazakh style himself, as the boogeyman because one, you got a multitude of fighters out there who avoided him, who has avoided him. Two, the dude is a darn good fighter, Gail, right? Talented southpaw, has shown boxing skill, has shown inside fighting ability, maturity for someone with under 15 fights, and power to boot. Trained by Buddy McGirt, promoted by Top Rank. Not a lot of people know about him now, but I think would continue as the more he fights, the more people will notice him. In this fight against Bentley, I'm sorry, convince me to think that this is not more than a showcase fight, because on the surface, that's all this looks to be. Janibek should win and win comfortably. If he doesn't stop this dude, I'd be surprised.
That's an assignment I decline because I am not up to it. It ain't going to happen. You're absolutely right. Yeah, it's a showcase fight. That's perfectly okay. Top Rank's giving him work, and he isn't well known by the American audience. He's yet another sort of interchangeable Eastern European fighter to a lot of people who don't know him. Their names are hard to pronounce. They're harder to spell. So this is a smart thing for Top Rank to do. Little by little, they give these guys work, get them exposure to the audience. They're not paying out a huge amount of money to do it on weekends where there are a lot of competing sports for their attention. And I don't hate it. I don't hate that at all. Give him some exposure, give him an easy touch, let him get some good work in, and then see what's next. The problem with these guys like Alimkhanuly is when they aren't very well known, don't have a big fan base, guys aren't willing to tackle somebody this tough because the risk reward ratio is so low. Salaries for fighting a guy like this, because of the lack of fan base, lack of attention, the difficulty of putting butts in the seats at a big venue, just can't make enough money to make the pay worthwhile, to take the risk. So they have to have fights like this for him.
On the undercard here, I'm going to bring both of you into this discussion. It's a fighter that I've been touting for a while now, not only here on Pound for Pound Box Report, but as well as my brothers over at Three Kings Boxing. We've talked about Seniesa, Estrada to great length, excuse me. Three Kings Boxing named Super Bad as the Women's Fighter of the Year for 2021. She had a fantastic year, winning 2 world titles in 2 weight divisions. This is her first fight in 2021, Daniel and Gail, due to squabbles outside of the ring with Golden Boy. Golden Boy, they separated they both decided to split. Estrada has since signed a deal with Top Rank. She makes her debut with Top Rank on the undercard here of Janibek, of Alimkhanuly and Denzel Benton, fighting by a woman by the name of Villarino. And again, just like I posed the same question to you, Daniel, you can follow up, Gail. I'll pose the same question to you, Daniel, that I posed to Gail. Convince me that this fight between Estrada and Villarino is not a showcase fighter for Super Bad. She's talking big. She's been out the ring a while. Her actions, her videos suggest that she's hungry. She's ready to get back in there. To me, that spells trouble for her upcoming opponent. Just like I expect Janibek to stop Bentley, I fully expect Superbad to put on a show and stop Villarino.
Just like Gail declined the Janibek assignment, I am declining the Superbad assignment.
You're a wise man.
Yes, because this is a situation where you have to, it is your debut match for a new promotion, and you do have to show off a bit. Now, obviously, when it comes to Seniesa, yes, she was the 2021 Female Fighter of the Year, but now she has two really, really big shadows by the name of Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor that have shown up and say, like, nope, you need to work a little bit harder now in the women's ranks to be a multiple-time fighter that's a top level and people consider top fighter of the year. I understand this situation, Golden Boy. Luckily, they didn't really leave under that much bitter circumstances, but it did delay her year, and now very, very late coming into this fight. But the point is, when it comes to Seniesa, it's a showcase fight, and it's a fight to show not just showcase her skills, not just showcase the reason why her nickname is Superbad, but to showcase Seniesa as a person. She is arguably, probably right now in the U.S., the most marketable female fighter.
Fans of Alicia Baumgartner will beg to differ, but proceed.
Yes, that and I can definitely hear that argument, and I can also hear the argument people still have for Clarissa Shields. But it's a situation where you need to make a really good impression, because this fight is not mainly made for the hardcore heads, not mainly made for people that want to see her face challenge. This is a fight that's made for advertisers, for sponsors. And she'll definitely show out, and she'll definitely get a lot of attention here, because it's a difficult task that she has this year to escape the shadow of Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor. But there are a few fighters that can be able to do that, and Seniesa is one of them.
Indeed, I go to you, Gail. To Daniel's last point about the marketability, the potential marketability of Seniesa Estrada. Look, she has the endorsements outside the ring. She's very personable, good behind the mic. To many, to a lot of folks, she's very pleasing to the eye. LeBron James, she's part of LeBron. LeBron James has signed her up to endorse his supplement company, Ladder. She has other endorsements on the way. Top Rank in the fold. Look for them to do a bang-up job behind the scenes. In short, if everything comes together and she continues to win, and starting with this upcoming fight against Villarino, the potential in and outside the ring, limitless.
Limitless, absolutely, for all the reasons we stated. I don't even need to repeat them. Estrada had just really reached the limits of what Golden Boy could do with her promotionally, and she made the right move. Top Rank is building its stable of women fighters. They proceeded very cautiously at first. And Estrada's going to owe a debt of gratitude to Michaela Mayer because Top Rank practiced, if you will, a lot of what they're now applying to their growing stable with Mayer. So,
And it was Mayer, low key behind the scenes, who pushed Top Rank to go after Estrada and sign a deal.
yep, absolutely. And you know what that tells me is someday here down the road when Mayer decides to hang up her gloves, she'd make a damn good manager. And I would love to see more women in the management side of the business. That's just healthy for the sport and to help grow the women's side of it and work with male fighters as well. So I'd love somebody to put that idea in her mind if it isn't there already, and see what happens.
Um, yeah, absolutely. Again, Alimkhanuly, he's fighting Seniesa Estrada. She's fighting both of this. This is going to be a doubleheader on ESPN coming up this weekend in ESPN Plus, excuse me, happening in Las Vegas, Nevada. Let's move on from that card to keep the theme rolling here with the ladies, and let's go over to the UK, Manchester, England, to be specific. Going back to you on this one, Gail. Look, I know when it comes to Women's Fighter of the Year, Katie Taylor, Clarissa Shields are the leading candidates. Chantelle Cameron gets mentioned now based off of her win against McCaskill, but another lady who deserves some consideration is Natasha Jonas, who we've told the story numerous times here on Pound for Pound Box Report. Most of her career at 130 and 135. Earlier this year, she made the decision to move all the way up to 154, and the move has been highly beneficial as she's won not one but two world titles at 154 pounds. She goes for a third against Marie-Eve Dicaire. Dicaire, some fans will remember her loss to Clarissa Shields a couple of years, I think last year, I believe it was. Anyway, another unification fight against Jonas. Gail, can she keep the ball rolling? Can she come not just win one, not two, but win three world titles at 154 pounds?
I think she can. You know, she has sort of been a late developer in her career, and she's got momentum behind her now. And that really makes a difference. You know, that wind at your back, and it affects everyone around you who's working for you. It affects the way people see you. It affects the way judges see you. Yes, I think she's got everything on her side, and she has really had to work hard for it. Um, and props to the British fight fans once again, who really embraced women's professional boxing in a way that we haven't quite done it here in the United States. So that's given her a platform as well that she's really profited from.
In many ways, 2022, Daniel, has been the year of the women in boxing. I would give a serious argument that they have carried the sport this year, and it continues with Jonas and Dicaire. Another unification bout. Again, the ladies showing the fellas out, at least in terms of the best fighting the best.
Yeah, this is probably one of the cherries on top that you can have as far as what should, yeah, up to this point, probably the best year when it comes to women's boxing, because obviously you had Clarissa Shields and Savannah Marshall put on a house show. You had an all-female card in the UK, and you also had something that a lot of people did not think would happen: a women's fight, a women's main event, selling out the Garden. The women did that, and this is going to be a perfect cherry on top. We know the story of Natasha Jonas. We know the weight class she's hovering in, and like I said, that opens up the avenue to fight one Clarissa Shields. I would not be too hesitant to see that. So this is going to be a really, really good fight. This is going to be a really good year for women's boxing, and hopefully They carried more. And I'll say this. A lot of the love for the women have been in the lower weight classes. But just like with the men, we tend to ignore, unfortunately, the little guys in the heavyweight.
You went out on us briefly, Daniel. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, I said. Well, what I was saying is that, like with the men, we know we don't focus a lot on the little guys except for the hardcore heads. For the women, I got a feeling next year the inverse is going to happen, where the often ignored heavyweight ranks, cruiserweight, light heavyweight, I think those are going to get a start to shine because they have now shown that there is a market for women's boxing. And if this year has improved it, I got a feeling next year is going to prove it even more.
Absolutely, absolutely. Give a shout out to those who are in the chat. Mitch, as well as Bang Wee. Let me read a couple of comments from him. He says Bivol should be pound for pound #1 this year. Also says he's put Kyrgyzstan on the map. I agree. #1 pound for pound. Ugh. He's up there. He is up there, certainly, in terms of what he's done this year, who he has beaten. Quick roundtable here. We will give our year-end awards towards the end of 2022, if not 2023. Is Dmitry Bivol leading candidate for Fighter of the Year?
That, I think, is an easier call than whether he's the top pound for pound. Yes, right now, he's my Fighter of the Year. My other candidates would have been Bam Rodriguez, who came out of nowhere. I think his last fight showed us that he's still got a little growing to do, and that's recency bias, of course. His last fight was a little rough for him. And I do think we've got to wait to declare until we see Estrada Chocolatito 3. It's very possible.
I say we have to wait and see.
We could definitely have Roman in the mix if he has a good performance.
Throw Inoue in there as well. If he's many people expect him to beat Butler. If that's the case, it will be undisputed champion.
Yeah. That would be a Buster Douglas level upset if he loses.
Right. And if Inoue isn't Fighter of the Year, his destruction of Donaire in the rematch, clear candidate for spectacular performance of the year.
The problem with Inoue is he just didn't really get challenged at all. I would argue that Donaire has had an amazing career resurrection, but his age, it takes just the slightest bit of edge off that fight. And Butler, come on, who are we kidding? I think Inoue has to have some killer matchups when he moves up in weight, and I do think a pound for pound top #1 and Fighter of the Year is in his future. No question about it. He'll get there.
What say you, Daniel?
This year, though, I don't. To me, pending what happens in the Estrada Chocolatito trilogy, right now, it is Bivol for me.
What say you, Daniel, in terms of the comments in the live YouTube chat in terms of Bivol?
You can make a case. I can say you can make a case because of the fact of who he beat. He technically beat the guy who many people had considered the pound for pound #1 in Canelo. And normally, to beat a man, you had to beat the man. Well, he beat the man. So there is an argument to be made, but Inoue has a bit of an argument to be made there. either Chocolatito or Gallo are gonna have a definite say in December. And probably, and this is the part where I'm pretty sure people are gonna say, "Oh, it's because of heavyweights." Yeah, considering what he was coming from to make this fight, there's gonna be some votes in for Usyk. Considering what he was coming from.
Yeah. And I would throw in a nod for Devin Haney as well. I forgot to mention him. What's wrong with me? I should have. Yeah.
Yes,
I agree.
that. So
he should definitely not be overlooked. I don't think he wins, but we've got some incredibly strong runner-up honorable mentions, and they all need to be cited. Whoever we decide is at the top. And I can truly also make a case that, gender aside, Katie Taylor is the fighter of the year.
Yeah. Her and Shields deserves nomination. If we're going to keep this, if we're going to have a true representation and keep this award genderless, non-gender specific.
Yeah.
And we're getting to the point where we really should. I do think this exercise tells me, for all the disappointments we have following this sport, and we love to hate it sometimes, looking at this list, look at these talented athletes that we're talking about, every one of whom, depending on your point of view, there are good arguments for all of them. They're all at the top of their game. They all fought worthy opponents. It does happen. I would love to see us focus a little more on all of these men and women than getting so wound up about a damn fight between two welterweights slowly fading into obscurity who didn't seem to figure out a way to make a fight.
And I think
say it with your chest, Gail. Say it with your chest.
No names.
And I think we're going to end things on that note. If you like what you heard this evening on YouTube, if you like what you've heard here on YouTube, make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and to do so, hit that bell so you get every notification when a new episode drops. It'll really help the overall algorithms, and again, it'll get us closer to being monetized. I want to thank everybody who with their comments in the live chat. Bon Wee Mitch Pryor, and good luck, Mitch, on the lottery. Go around the panel here. Start the show with ladies first and always end the show with ladies first. Gail from Communities Digital News and NYFights.com. For those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to check you out occasionally on TMZ Live, let the folks know where they can find you.
Hey, Mitch, if I don't win, I'm rooting for you. However, if I win, I've already promised that I will take everyone from our Friday night salon we call the chat, and I'll add the pound for pound boxing report community. I'm going to take you all to a fight. So we're all going. We're going to have to, if all the pound for pound fans come, damn, I'm going to have to buy 2 or 3 luxury suites. I'll be able to afford it and be glad to do it. And in the meantime, if that does not happen, you can find me here and at nyfights.com with the growing and influential crew covering all things boxing and a few other combat sports as well.
I'll go to you, Daniel, from For Boxing News and the Inquirer, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk pro wrestling, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat. Let the folks know where they can find you.
You can find me, folks, on Twitter, Rux99, RAWKZ99. We're starting to close out the year. Hopefully, we have to remember that we only got a few months to go. We never know what's going to happen. But definitely, tomorrow is election day. Get out, vote, make your voices heard, because this particular election could be one of the more important ones in the history of this country. if enough people slack off.
For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness with me on Twitter, you know what it is, Brother JR at Brother JR76. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, and fragrance with me on Instagram, you can do so at Brother JRSC on Instagram. And on the fragrance tip, it's been a while since I dropped a new fragrance. I'm coming with one this week. It is a banger. I will brag. I will humble brag and say that particularly if you're a fan of the Zhirjov House, the most popular fragrance in their line, the one who gets the fragrance who gets the most hype. Your dude, he has it. It's in his hands, and I will probably drop something on that this week. On the next episode, very very light week this coming weekend. So what we may do, maybe it'll probably be devoted to just mainly recap and news. Again, the weekend of the 19th, not much happening in terms of, particularly when it comes to world title weekend. The weekend of the 19th is not much happening in terms of world title action and whatnot. So next week will probably be mainly devoted to recaps and news. Again, I want to thank everybody who joined us in the live chat. Appreciate your comments. For Gail from Communities Digital News and Wi-Fi's and nyfights.com. Daniel from For Boxing News and the Inscriber. I'm your host, Michael. This has been episode 384 of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. Excuse me. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening, and good night.